What's going on, guys? Matt Schaeffer back here with another Musaic audiophile build for you. This one is a brand new Tesla Plaid conversion 1. Let's go check it out. Since we always start with the trunk, give you a rundown of how this whole system is made up. So this is going to be actually the first time I've done two Utopia M10s in a Model S. Essentially, it was a request by the client, so I changed the way that I do the system. You can see in the other video that I'll attach at the end of this video, the other Model S Plaid, I essentially utilized the factory subwoofer location for the subwoofer enclosure, so the client still had all of that space. But in this case, he wanted to sacrifice that space for the extra subwoofer, so we came up with this design here. So we essentially have a sealed enclosure, and we utilize a lot of really cool different materials and design to add a little bit of flair to it. So we brought the white in, as you can see. Essentially, we have the matching Alcantara that you see here, here, and here. We have the matching carpet that is going to blend into the factory carpet, and we utilize this grill material that we created that matches the same spec, the Mosconi Pro amps, which is going to be underneath this floor. So all of those little circles there is going to match perfectly to the Mosconi Pro amplifiers. We have the white layer behind the black layer, which is giving you that really cool look. Obviously, it's cut open for the sub. We have a layer of red acrylic and lit acrylic there in the sub opening, just to give it a little pop of red. Red always looks really good with white. And then, of course, you can see closely that material there, that gray material, that's actually going to match what you see on the factory door panels right there, if you can see it. So it's the same material we sourced. So we're bringing that look into the subwoofer enclosure here. The center I wanted to do kind of like a little focal point. So if you look close, we have the Plaid logo, which is actually embossed out of the acrylic, and it's lit up completely. So that same layer of acrylic that you see there with the sub is actually the same layer that is lighting up all of these different areas here. So when we create that back layer, and I can overlay some pictures here so you can see how the behind of this is kind of layered together, but we laser etch the acrylic in these spots so it glows evenly, and that's how we do that, which is a really cool idea that I don't really ever see many people do. We have this nice little louver design here in the center, which I thought would make it look a little bit aggressive. But yeah, other than that, all these are RGB lights too, so these can change any color you want. They're just not magenta or pink. You know, you can change them and make them whatever you want to make them. Top of the enclosure also has that Plaid material inset, and this is again the factory top panel, which still functions and completely covers everything. So this is the factory floor, which is still completely removable. Nothing changed there. Floor comes out and reveals the full amp rack. So essentially, we have 4 RGB fans, as you can see. Again, same color, same leg of RGB as that. So these are all controlled together, can be changed any color together. And then we have the lights here in the center, which also can be changed. They are RGB as well. So this whitish blue can be changed to any color that you wish. If you look close, we did the Tesla logo, much like you saw the Plaid logo. So it's embossed out, clear acrylic, and we got Tesla and we got Plaid there, which is pretty fitting for the car. We have gloss black. We got, again, that same grill material that you saw in the sub enclosure. So you have these 2 fans here that are pushing down, pushing air down. You have these 2 which are pulling air out. So when this cover is off, he can have air fully circulating to the Class A amplifiers and the amplifiers that are below. So all of this is going to stay very cool. With the case of the amps being down here, obviously this is recommended only if he's going to drive around and put golf clubs in here or groceries or something like that. Any other scenario, he would just keep the floor out if he wasn't going to use it. That way the airs could properly ventilate, because again, this is a Class A amplifier. It's a Mosconi Pro 430. They're not as efficient, but obviously they sound much better, but obviously they get hot. So that explains all the fans and the fans that I'll show you here when I take this panel out. But again, we got the carpet, the Tesla Plaid material, we got the gloss acrylic, matte acrylic, all these different lit layers here. And then essentially this panel, I'll try and do it with one hand. This panel can lift up. All right. So I got the panel lifted up, and there is a harness here to undo the power and the fans and the lights. So you can pull this completely out to work on the car if you had to service anything. But essentially we have another fan down here which is blowing directly onto the hottest part of this amplifier to cool it down. We have additional fans down here to cool the lower amps. These don't get nearly as hot. You can tell the fans aren't even on. Fans are on the Class A right now running, but the lower ones are not running. So all of this moves air down below. We can still access all three amplifiers. You got the 210, the 110 underneath this, and the 110 underneath that. And you can tell the amp is spaced far off of the board here, so air is actually running underneath the amplifier through the amp to keep everything very, very cool. We also have input circuit breaker here from the front, and then we have a post battery circuit breaker going to our amplifiers. Our DSP is a Helix DSP Ultra that is behind this panel here that we created. Essentially we had to cut the pocket in half, make that cover to fit in there to hide where our DSP mount comes down. So behind this panel, and I'll overlay some pictures, but you have the DSP Ultra on a custom aluminum bracket that is going to mount to the factory location. And then we have two Titanate batteries down here on a custom aluminum battery rack that's bolted here to the car. And these are going to be the power source for a lot of our accessories that we're running on the car. Obviously you need to make sure that the amplifiers can handle up to 16 volts. There's a lot of amplifiers that do not work. I have a laundry list of things that do not work on this car, but Moscone Pro will work, the DSP Ultra will work. So that's kind of the breakdown of all the behind the scenes. You can get to anything that you need to super quick, super easy. It's very serviceable. And yeah, let me go ahead and throw the amp rack back in. All right, so amp rack is back in. Like I said, all these lights turn on when you open up the trunk automatically. So when you're driving, these lights are not active, which is how you want it, because you're not going to want to see the reflection of the lights in your rear glass. So the only time these lights come on is when you open the trunk. Factory floor goes back in. And just like that, that's your system. So we'll go ahead and check out the inside and how the system operates. All right, as far as the inside goes, pretty straightforward, pretty simplistic. Front doors came off. I can overlay some pictures here of what it looks like behind the door. We did full sound treatment, had to make some adapters for the 8-inch Utopia M mid bass. That's what's here in the lower part of the door. So essentially we did a combination of hush mat, sound shield, and black hole tile to fully sound treat the door. Turns this whole door pretty much into a 1 cubic foot enclosure, which is perfect for the designed 8-inch Utopia M's. So a lot of mid bass out of these doors. Essentially we have the custom pillars up top with the Focal Utopia M 3.5 and tweeter. We rewrapped it in a matching Alcantara suede. Those grills in the center are custom made, so essentially we pressed those grills ourselves. We made a die, pressed them, cut them, and made the trim rings for everything to have that factory fit and finish. So when you're looking at the speakers, it doesn't look like there's anything aftermarket. They're protected. And like I said, they blend right into the rest of the car. Reason we put these speakers up top is for a better soundstage. The tweeters in this from the factory are tucked here at the bottom of the dash, kind of in the corner. The mid-range is up there on the dash firing into the glass. So these are going to give us a little bit more control when we're EQing the system to work a little bit more to our benefit. All right, so if you're looking up here at the headliner, this is going to be our Helix Director controller, different than the Conductor, which you typically see me use, which is just the single knob. This one has a display, a little bit harder to integrate. You need more depth. In this case, the only suitable spot really was the headliner. So essentially I make a multiple layered acrylic housing to hold in that circuit board. And then essentially I use my own knob here. If you look close, you can see this little design here. It says Helix. And then I am able to load in the Tesla logo into that display. So it gives you that factory feel. This is going to control the main volume. It's going to control the sub bass volume here. And then I can change the presets by hitting sound setup here. I can monitor the voltage in this. Obviously this is the 15.5 volt Tesla, which, as you know, you can't just easily integrate into. There's a list of procedures and obvious additional parts you need to install in order to install a full sound system in here. You cannot just hook up these amps, or any amp in that case, to the factory battery, even if it is a pretty small amplifier. You only have about 20 amps of current on the factory allotted system. So how this car is designed, they changed the battery up front from the traditional 12 volt to a 15 volt small lithium ion battery, and that battery only has the capacity really to run what's in the power port of your center console, so roughly 20 amps of current. Obviously the amplifiers are going to work at a higher voltage, which means in most cases you're drawing less amperage. So you know, the system will run more efficiently. But again, you can't just hook up an amplifier to this factory system, much like the old Teslas, because you will run into issues with that factory battery. So essentially, you know, we added our own batteries. We're charging those batteries with a circuit that we made to connect to the front battery safely. So if you need any help working on these cars, you can always email me, hit me up. I do consultations on Teslas all the time to help shops and DIYers through the process of how to add in equipment into the 15.5 volt Teslas. Back to the system. Again, we have our Conductor up top. This is our controller. We have 3 presets, much like we always do. Preset 1 is going to be our factory radio, the factory MCU. Everything is going to operate exactly like it did from the factory. You're not going to lose any functions. You're going to improve the sound quality tenfold. And all of that is going to run through preset 1. You still get all your chimes, your Bluetooth, all that kind of stuff. So again, nothing is lost. Preset 2 is going to be a Bluetooth connection from our phone directly to the DSP. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to have better audio bandwidth from our phone. When we are connected to the factory radio, essentially to grab the signal from the factory radio, we're summing the front mid-bass, mid-range, and tweeter into one signal to create a full range signal, right? You're still going to have to battle factory filters, factory EQ, and things like that. Another big obstacle with all Tesla is a lot of times when you get software updates for the car, they'll change the EQ factory frequency response with those updates sometimes. So if I tune it today for the factory MCU, it doesn't mean next week it's going to have the same frequency response. It might change minutely where, let's say they just put a bump at 5K, 6K, and they said in the update in the release notes that they added, you know, HD fidelity or something like that. But in reality, they're just bumping the EQ a bit to create that difference, not really making any improvements. Whereas, you know, the client sitting in the car, the owner of the car, is like, man, I'm so glad I got a Tesla, because not only are they improving and adding features to the car, but they're making the audio system sound better with updates, when really it's just snake oil. But that's something that we have to combat in the aftermarket audio experience. So the Bluetooth preset 2 is never going to change, right? It's always going to be a perfect organic signal, and that's something we don't have from the factory. They don't have a factory amplifier interface for this car, meaning a computer device that we can plug into where the factory amp plugged into, and it's going to give us a digital output that'll go to our DSP, hence perfect signal. In this case, we don't have the perfect signal. We have the high level input into the DSP that we're summing together. We can still make it sound awesome, way better than factory, but like I said, just something to keep in mind of why we do that second preset. And when we do the second preset, I can connect my phone to the DSP and I can connect my phone to the factory radio at the same time. So I can hit Bluetooth and I can go into the factory radio, and right now my phone is connected to the Bluetooth preset 2, and I'm also connected to the factory radio, so I can still see what I'm playing on the factory radio, and I can even hit next track to play the next track, right? I see everything right here. So I can still control everything through the factory radio, and the audio is being diverted to the DSP with a digital perfect signal, right? So that is the best case scenario in how we utilize this system. And essentially when we move to preset 2 or preset 3, which I'll get to in a second, I have a switch down here for the factory center channel where we re-engage this to the factory amplifier. Therefore, if I re-engage that center channel, like I was just saying where we put the switch in, I can still hear the Bluetooth voice and everything coming through that factory center channel. That way I don't have to switch presets back from preset 2 to preset 1 to the OEM radio. If I get a phone call, I can still take that phone call and hear the voice coming through that center channel. So that is preset 2. Preset 3 is going to be our ASE Kern SP3000. So essentially we're taking the analog out of the player that is feeding directly into our DSP as its own input, and then we're switching the input on the DSP, and we have a preset tune just utilizing this input. What that is giving us is the best audio reproduction possible when it comes to playing music inside a car. This player is produced to be a music player, right? So much like a phone, phones aren't going to have great DACs in it. They're not going to have great pieces of equipment in it to reproduce that music. And especially, you know, with an iPhone, unless you're adding your own DAC to the iPhone, you're not going to be able to play certain types of music for, you know, format files. Whereas this, we can play DSD, we can play everything that's available to us as far as digital files for music, and we can have that run through the DSP. Whereas if I went digital out of the player, I would be capped to what the DSP can physically process. So I mean, if I had DSD files on here, I wouldn't be able to play them if I was doing digital out directly to the DSP, which is also why we do the analog out. We're also utilizing the DACs of the player before we get into the input of the DSP. So again, I essentially load music onto this. You also have the ability to hook up to Tidal, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, Amazon Music, everything that really exists from the streaming platforms, you can still utilize through this. So keep in mind, if you're running those platforms through your phone, you can do it through this and it's going to sound much better, right? The separation, the width, the depth is going to be very drastic when you go from preset 2 to preset 3. You'll sit in the car and notice everything is further apart. Everything is deeper. The space of the car is going to feel much larger, right? So everything is, again, going to have more of a distinct place on its soundstage on the dashboard. So that's why we do something like this. Of course, when we remove the interior, we fully sound treated the floors, the front, the back, and then the rear doors as well. Now, we kept the rear factory speakers in place. We do not need those speakers to really be of high quality because we're not asking the rear speakers to really add a lot of quality to the system. Essentially, we're tuning them in a way to make the car feel bigger. Much like when you're at a concert, you know, there's no rear speakers. What you're hearing behind you is a reflection of what you're hearing in front of you. So we tune the car the same way to have that same type of soundstage and image. And yeah, that's everything. So thank you guys so much for the continued support. Thanks so much for continuing to show the excitement and faith to rely on me to get these cars done. Most of my cars get shipped in from all over the country, and you guys give me the opportunity to do what I love and hopefully give you something that's really going to make you love driving your car. If you want to contact me for a job, here is my phone number followed by my email address. These are the two best points of contact. Of course, make sure you follow me on all the social networks. So of course you have TikTok, which I utilize more as a in-progress build video platform, so you can see what I'm doing as it's being built, and more quicker walkthrough videos than what you're seeing on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out. Also Instagram, here's our 3 handles below. At the Real Matt ES is the one that I frequent the most. That is my personal Instagram. If this is your first time on YouTube and seeing the videos that I create, we've done many other vehicles like this. Done a ton of Teslas, all sorts of different types of Teslas, all different tiers of systems, so different price points. So go ahead and check that out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you like the video and share it with friends. And then of course our website is musaicdesign.com. This is going to be where you're going to find all of the different things in one place. You're going to find all the pictures, the build logs, the videos, the full collection, the breakdowns of everything. You're going to find that right there through our website. Also attached to our website, you'll find the link to our podcast, which is called the Old Fashioned Car Audio Podcast. This is a podcast to educate a bunch of people who had experience in car audio, let's say in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, got out of it for a while, and they have a car that they want to achieve great audio in. We're bringing you up to date on all the new tech, all the different information, so you know what questions to ask your local shop, or what direction to go to, and what's most important when building a great audio system. We have great guests on that you probably remember from the past, so go ahead and check out our podcast. It's on Spotify and anywhere that you download a podcast. And like always, guys, I appreciate the feedback, and until next time.